Hello, everyone. I'm really sorry I don't speak Greek, so I'll try and speak slowly in English, and I hope that it's going to be okay. I think many of us maybe would have heard this statistic before, that women only apply for jobs where we know 100% of what's needed for that particular role, and that is much lower for men. But there's actually also some evidence to suggest that women are less likely to grab opportunities when they are presented to us. There was one study where a group of men and a group of women were each asked to rate their own abilities in science, how good they were at science. And then they were asked to participate in a scientific experiment. Consistently, women rated their abilities lower than what men did, even though they actually performed roughly around the same level. That is maybe not super surprising, unfortunately, but what I think is really interesting about that study is when after that, both men and women were asked whether they wanted to enter their scientific experiment into a competition where they could win prizes, whereas 71% of men took the opportunity, only 49% of women did. So even when it's really low risk and potentially high effort, granted I don't know what the prizes were, but the experiment was already done, not a lot of effort of actually putting it into the competition, women are less likely to seize the opportunities. And I've personally absolutely been part of this statistic, because when I started in tech in a much simpler world of 2015, I now work in product management, but back then I was an analyst working with social media data to create reports for clients around what was going on online. And I was doing my thing, having a nice time, and then this happened. So this is my son, Max, who was born, and then, of course, I went on maternity leave, and I came back. And having children hit people very differently, right? But for me, returning back to work was super stressful. I sort of felt like I had to find myself again. I didn't really know who I was in the sort of working environment. Was I just Max's mum now, or what was going on? So it was really a hard time for me professionally, and I was sort of still finding my feet when, very selfishly, my lovely, supportive manager decided to take a new position. And so I was left to fend for myself, is what it felt like. And perhaps not unsurprisingly, considering the statistic that I quoted earlier about women consistently underrating, someone trying to get in, about women consistently underrating their own abilities, I was really surprised when I was asked if I wanted to lead the team in the UK. And I specifically remember my first thought was, what if my son has chickenpox and I have to take some time off last minute? I absolutely can't do this because I won't be very reliable now that I'm a parent. I can't do it. And my CCO at the time in the company gave me some advice at that point that I've really carried with me ever since. He said, well, we've all got shit going on all the time. That was his words, not mine. And you absolutely should not think that there's something that you can't do because you are a parent, or because you've got stuff going on. If you don't want this position, he said to me, that's fine. But if you do, you absolutely owe yourself to go for it. And I think from that experience, what I took away was, number one, exactly what he said. We've absolutely all got stuff going on all of the time. There's never a right time to do anything in life, right? It's so true. And so if there's something we want as women or anyone, we should absolutely go for it. And secondly, someone need help up there. And secondly, look out for your allies as you're going through the career, because they might not always be who you expect. I did not expect a white sort of male from the C-suite to be my ally in this journey, but he was. And I spoke to him before coming in to do this talk, and he said, oh, I've had that conversation with so many female leaders in my team since, so it's clearly not just me. But all of this is all good and well, of course, when you do have a good support network around, when you do have people that are championing you, all of this stuff. But of course, we all know that that doesn't always happen that way. And in fact, we know that the second most quoted reason why women in leadership want to change their role is because of unsupportive managers. It's ahead of unmanageable workloads. And I've absolutely also been part of this statistic, unfortunately, because in fact, when I did take the role, even though I'm glad I did it, a few months in, leadership changed again, and what I was left in was a crazy environment that wasn't very supportive. Work-life balance was not being kind of encouraged at all. I remember getting up at 5 a.m. to try and do some work before my son woke up. And for anyone that's got young kids, you'll know that that's obscene because you're already not sleeping. So like trying to do that is just the worst idea anyone's ever had. And so I want to add a third point to that list, which is also identify who are not your allies and then have a plan. Because I think often the thing that is feeling sort of inhabilitating is when we don't have an exit route. We're in a position and we're not comfortable, we're not happy, but we don't have a plan to get out of it. So identify who's not going to champion you and then come up with a plan and a strategy. And I did this, and I had all of the very hard conversations. I sort of suggested ways that we could get out of it. I even escalated the case up the ranks, and nothing helped. And so I did become part of the earlier statistic that I was talking about, and I was looking elsewhere to see what other opportunities were out there. And thankfully, there was an opening within the company I was at the time to move into product management. For anyone that might not be familiar with it, that's sort of sitting with the engineering department, design department to build products, software products in my case, to represent the business in that way. And I would really love to say, obviously I'd learned from all of the things I just talked about, and I applied for the position, and that was lovely, but that didn't happen that way, because what I told myself was, well, I know I'll be trying for another baby soon, so not particularly reliable to actually be doing a career shift now. And also, I can't do 100% of the things. Like, I like data. I was an analyst. I like data. But am I particularly techie? I don't think I can do it. It's not the right time, right? Because old habits die really hard. And luckily, eventually, I did apply for the position, and I did make the change into product management at that point. And I'm really glad that I did, because this eventually did happen. We had my daughter Nova here, but she followed one of the hardest years in my personal life. Career-wise, I was happy, loved my new job, but personally, she didn't come easy. We had loads of miscarriages all of the time. It was a super hard year. My mental health was so badly impacted by it all. And then there was a little thing like the pandemic kind of also happened at the same time. I don't even really want to talk about it, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But obviously it was a hard time for a lot of people during this, not just me, right? So she came at a time where I was like really stressed and really, really struggling with everything. And I think what the pandemic did show us actually was, in fact, that we do all have stuff going on all of the time, and that's okay, and we can absolutely still work. So I'd love to say that all of this was going on. I was struggling personally, but the moral of the story is that you can have stuff going on and it didn't impact my professional life. But that's just, it's not true. And on reflection, how could it be? Because we are our whole selves all of the time, and that's okay. So I will have work thoughts. No matter how much I try to ignore it, work thoughts will pop into my head during the day. I wrote most of this talk when I was out like on my lunch break and not in work mode. And the other way around is true as well. So what happens in my personal life absolutely impact me at work. It doesn't make me unreliable. It doesn't make me not worthy of the positions or the work that I'm doing, but it does impact me. And that's okay, because we are our whole selves. We wear so many different hats, and we all do this, but women in particular, right? I wear one hat when I'm at work, another one when I'm the mum for Nova, another one when I'm the mum for Max, another one when I'm a wife or a girlfriend, another one when I'm managing someone. We wear so many hats, but they all come from the same shelf. And we can't control whether one of the hats from the shelf is shouting at you. Like, remember that thing that happened at work? You've got to do that in a minute. That's okay, it can shout. But we can control what hat we're wearing at what time. And I want to be absolutely clear when I say this, that what I'm suggesting is not that we wear the working hat all of the time and then just put other hats on top. Absolutely not. I think, if anything, I'm suggesting quite the opposite. That in a world where we have so many hats to wear all of the time. We've got so many stuff that we've got to kind of keep an order on and everything. It's so important that we, as women, but anyone really, protect our boundaries and are clear about it. And unfortunately, if anything, it looks as if protecting your work-life balance is getting harder. It's hitting younger people and parents the worst. But also look at the end of that statistic. Almost half of female employees rate their work-life balance as poor. That is awful, right? That's a terrible statistic. But it also makes a ton of sense because it's really, really difficult to do. And I've mentioned here 10 things that I sort of live by in trying to do this, but I've highlighted the 2 things that I think stand out the most for me anyway. And the first one on there is about communicating your boundaries. I sort of talked about it already, but it's not just like once. It's not me going, oh, I don't work on Fridays. I don't work on Fridays. It's putting it in my out of office, it's putting in my Slack messages, it's putting it in my Google email, all of that stuff. And it's doing it continuously. Someone puts in a meeting, I don't work Fridays. End of story. Being unapologetically communicative about your boundaries is so important. But the second one is also equally important, that is, it will absolutely slip. It happens all of the time. I've been working late for the last 2 weeks because standing here and talking, like, it's a big thing for me. So like, I've been practicing loads and I'm okay with it. That's fine. That was a choice I've made. But I also absolutely know that when I come back from Athens, I need to have a little chat with myself and tell myself this cannot go on, because that's not the expectation that I want to set for my business in my company. But also your organizations, the companies that you're in, might have things in place that you can utilize to create a better balance for yourself. So at GWI, where I work, we've got things in place like flexible working, early finishes, we have care leave, which is amazing. So when my daughter gets chicken pox, I don't have to worry about it because there is a specific leave that I can take for that. We do some work to try and balance the female kind of male balance, which also indirectly help with these things. And there may be stuff similarly in your company that can help you set this up. But I think one thing that I haven't highlighted on here that I want to call out by name, and I know there's just been a talk about it, and that's imposter syndrome. And the reason why I want to call it out is because I think, for me anyway, imposter syndrome is the main reason why all of this slips for me. Is when I feel like I'm not good enough, or why would someone want to hire me for this position? They should have gone with someone else. I'm not technical enough. All of these things. That's when I feel like I should be putting in hours. I don't want to put my boundaries up because I don't want to ask for too much. And so I want to end on this note, and I can't quote anyone for this because it's just my opinion. I rush to say that, but I do think this is at least true for me. The happier I am overall, the more I protect myself and my mental well-being, the better of an employee I am. So protecting myself is also good business sense. And we've all got stuff going on all of the time. So if you want something, don't let it stop you. Absolutely go for it. Thank you so much.